Ethan Hale had never thought his life would take such a strange turn. He was just a human engineer, working aboard a supply ship that carried parts and tools to outposts on the far edge of space. His job was simple: repair engines, fix broken circuits, and keep the machines running. But now, instead of crawling inside a starship's maintenance shaft, he found himself standing inside the grand palace of the Scifi Empire. The Scifi were one of the oldest and proudest alien civilizations. Their empire stretched across hundreds of star systems, and their warriors were feared across the galaxy. Humans had only joined the larger galactic community a few decades ago, and compared to ancient races like the Scifi, Earth was still seen as a newcomer. Most humans were ignored, treated as weak and unimportant. Ethan knew this well. That was why he couldn't understand why he, of all people, had been brought here. He stood inside a massive throne chamber, his boots sinking slightly into the polished stone floor. High pillars carved with alien symbols rose up to a ceiling so tall it disappeared into shadows. Strange glowing crystals gave the chamber a soft blue light. Alien nobles lined the sides of the hall, their eyes fixed on him. Some looked curious, others looked offended, as if a human had no right to step inside this sacred place. At the far end of the chamber sat the queen of the Scifi, Lasera. Her throne was not made of gold or jewels, but of black stone that shimmered with inner fire. She wore a flowing cloak that looked like liquid silver, and her crown was shaped from the horns of some ancient beast. Her skin carried a faint shimmer, like starlight on water, and her golden eyes studied Ethan with calm but piercing focus. Ethan swallowed hard. His heart pounded in his chest. He had faced many problems before: broken fuel lines, collapsing engines, even a fire inside a ship's reactor chamber. But nothing prepared him for this moment. He felt like a mouse being watched by a lion. A Scifi noble stepped forward, his voice deep and proud. "Queen Lasera, this is the human you requested. Ethan Hale of Earth, an engineer of low rank." The queen tilted her head slightly. Her golden eyes did not leave Ethan. "A human," she said softly, her voice carrying through the hall. "So fragile, yet so bold to stand here." Ethan cleared his throat. Thank you, Your Majesty. I'm not sure why I'm here." The nobles chuckled among themselves. Some whispered insults, others smirked. To them, Ethan sounded weak, lost, and out of place. But the queen did not laugh. She leaned forward on her throne, her gaze sharp and curious. Then, with words that silenced the entire hall, she asked, "Human, are you unclaimed?" The question echoed through the chamber like thunder. Ethan froze. He didn't understand. The nobles began to murmur in shock, their voices rising like a storm. Some looked horrified, others jealous. A few even looked angry. Ethan blinked, confused. "Unclaimed?" The queen's lips curved slightly. "Yes, do you belong to anyone? Have you sworn yourself to another? Are you bound by oath, by bond, by blood?" Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, I don't belong to anyone." Gasps filled the hall. Some nobles stepped back as if he had said something dangerous. Others sneered, muttering words Ethan could not understand. The queen, however, leaned back on her throne, her golden eyes shining with something that almost looked like triumph. "Good," she said softly. "Then you are free, and freedom has value." Ethan's mind raced. He still didn't understand why this mattered. Why did the queen of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy care whether a random human engineer was unclaimed? The chamber erupted into arguments. Nobles shouted at one another, their voices echoing off the high walls. Some demanded the queen explain herself. Others cried that this was a disgrace. But Queen Lasera raised her hand, and the entire hall fell silent at once. She rose from her throne and descended the steps slowly, her cloak flowing like silver water. Every noble bowed their head as she passed, but Ethan could not move. He stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat as the queen stopped before him. She was taller than him, her presence overwhelming, but her eyes locked onto his with a strange intensity. "You wonder why I ask," she said softly, only loud enough for him to hear. "You wonder why a queen would care about a single human." Ethan managed a small nod. The queen's gaze softened, but only for a moment. "Because sometimes the smallest flame can light the darkest path. My people have grown proud. Too proud. We forget the fire that built this empire. And in you, human, I see something. Unbroken, untamed, unclaimed." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He didn't know what to say. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a man who fixed machines. But the way she spoke, the way her golden eyes searched his face, made him wonder if she saw something in him that he could not see himself. The queen turned back toward her throne, but her words carried through the chamber once more. This human is not to be touched. He is under my protection. The nobles erupted again. Some cried out in outrage, others whispered in fear. A human under the queen's protection? It was unheard of. Ethan stood there, his mind spinning. Protection? From what? Why him? He had no answers, only questions. As the queen returned to her throne, Ethan felt the weight of 100 alien eyes still on him. He realized that his life had just changed forever. He was no longer just an engineer. He was now a piece on a board he didn't understand, in a game played by powers far beyond his reach. And it had all begun with one question. Ethan Hale did not sleep that first night inside the Scifi palace. His room was larger than any place he had ever stayed in his life. The walls glowed softly with light from living crystals, and a window opened to a view of a city that seemed to stretch forever, with towers of black stone and silver metal rising into the sky. Ships floated through the air on streams of blue energy, and below, wide avenues glimmered with alien markets and banners. It was beautiful, but Ethan could not enjoy it. His mind replayed the moment again and again, the queen asking him, "Human, are you unclaimed?" Every time he thought about it, his stomach tightened. Why had she asked that? What did it mean for him? And why had the entire court reacted with such shock? Ethan was an engineer. He liked problems with simple answers. Fix the circuit, replace the part, restart the machine. But this was politics. This was culture. This was power. And he was stuck in the middle of it. Whispers in the shadows the next morning, Scifi guards escorted him through the palace halls. Their armor gleamed black and red, their tall figures moving with silent discipline. Ethan could feel their eyes on him, even when they looked straight ahead. He knew they were wondering why a human was walking beside them instead of locked in a ship back to Earth. The palace itself was like a living maze. Walls of stone and crystal seemed to shift colors as he passed, glowing faintly with golden runes. Alien servants bowed their heads as the guards moved through, but Ethan noticed their sideways glances, their quick whispers after he passed. He didn't understand their language, but he didn't need to. He knew what they were saying. Why is a human here? Why is he under the queen's protection? What makes him so important? The guards brought him to a vast library chamber. There, an older Scifi scholar waited, his long robes trailing across the floor. His horns curved back elegantly and his eyes held a calm wisdom. "This is Master Velcor," one guard said. "He will teach you of our ways." Velcor bowed slightly, then gestured for Ethan to sit. "You must understand, human," Velcor said in a slow, careful tone. "The Queen's words have weight. To ask if you are unclaimed, it is not a small question. It is not a simple curiosity, it is a declaration." Ethan frowned. "A declaration of what?" Velcor studied him for a long moment. Then he leaned closer, his voice lowering. "In Scifi tradition, to be unclaimed means you are free of oath, free of ties. The Queen asked this before the court to signal that you are open for a bond." Ethan blinked. "A bond?" Velcor nodded. "A bond that ties two souls, two lives in loyalty and power. It is older than marriage, stronger than alliance. It has been used by our rulers for centuries to unite bloodlines and strengthen thrones. And now she speaks it to you, a human." Ethan's heart skipped. He felt dizzy. "Wait, you're saying she's thinking about me for something like that?" The scholar's golden eyes narrowed. "I am saying that the court believes she might, and that belief alone is dangerous." Enemies among the nobles by midday, Ethan was escorted to a balcony overlooking the palace gardens. There he finally had a moment of peace. The gardens stretched like rivers of color, filled with glowing plants, strange birds, and water flowing through silver channels. But he was not alone. A tall Scifi noble in dark robes stepped onto the balcony, his expression sharp. Two more followed, their eyes cold. "You are bold, human," the noble hissed. "Bold to stand before our queen. Bold to answer her as if you mattered." Ethan stiffened. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know what she meant." The noble's lip curled. "Ignorance is no excuse. The queen's gaze is not yours to hold. She belongs to the Scifi people, not to a fragile outsider from a backwater world." Ethan opened his mouth, but the noble stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Leave while you can. Return to your Earth. If you stay, you will drown in forces you cannot begin to understand. Before Ethan could answer, the noble turned sharply and walked away, his followers close behind. Ethan leaned on the railing, his hanking slightly. Ethan Hale had learned quickly that life in the Sarathi Palace was far more dangerous than any engineering problem he had ever faced. The halls were beautiful, yes, with their glowing crystals, shifting murals, and streams of warm light. But they were also alive with whispers, hidden glances, and the weight of countless eyes always watching. Every step he took seemed to echo through the palace, carrying news, rumors, and secrets before he even knew what had happened. Despite the Queen's protection, Ethan had begun to feel a gnawing sense of unease. Some of the nobles were not content with whispers and insults. They were plotting. The palace guards were loyal, yes, but even they could be bribed or tricked. For the first time in his life, Ethan realized that survival depended not on tools or engines, but on quick thinking, courage, and instinct. The palace ceremony, it happened on the third day after his private conversation with the Queen. The Sarathi were holding a ceremony of honor, a traditional event where nobles displayed loyalty and power. Ethan had been invited to observe, though he felt more like a target than a guest. The hall was larger than any he had ever seen, filled with towering pillars, floating crystal orbs, and a sea of Sarathi nobles dressed in elaborate robes. Their horns, jewelry, and shining skin reflected the glowing light. Ethan's heart pounded as he walked among them, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes on his every move. Queen Lysera sat on her throne, calm as ever, her golden eyes watching him from across the hall. He tried to focus on her, drawing courage from her presence. She had placed him here deliberately, making him visible to the court, showing the Sarathi that he was under her protection. But it also made him a target. The first strike, Ethan was not wrong. He noticed a noble in black robes moving unnaturally close, weaving through the crowd with a strange purpose. The man's horns were sharp and his eyes held a predatory gleam. Ethan had seen humans fight before, but he had never faced an enemy like this. Suddenly the noble lunged. Ethan barely had time to react. He felt the edge of a blade graze his shoulder. Sparks flew from the polished floor as the Sarathi's weapon scraped against the stone. Ethan's mind raced. In the past, he would have panicked, but years of quick thinking on starships had trained him to act fast. He grabbed a small metal pipe from a display stand, a simple object, nothing fancy, and swung it. The noble froze, surprised, giving Ethan just enough time to duck behind a pillar. The crowd gasped. Some thought it was part of a performance. Others understood the danger immediately. Guards moved fast, but the human's instincts were sharper. Ethan noticed a series of hanging cords above the floor, wires that powered the floating lights, and tugged one. Sparks and a small arc of electricity flew down, startling the would-be assassin. The noble shouted in anger, but Ethan didn't wait. Using the confusion, he ran toward the Queen's throne, sliding behind a low crystal barrier for cover. He had no plan, only the simple idea: stay alive and reach the Queen. The Queen intervenes. Lysera stood as the commotion reached her throne. With a gesture, she activated her personal guard, a group of elite Sarathi soldiers who moved faster than the eye could follow. In seconds, they surrounded Ethan, their weapons pointed at the attacker. The noble tried to flee, but the soldiers were too quick. He was disarmed, pinned, and removed from the hall before Ethan could even catch his breath. The other nobles were frozen in shock. A human had survived an assassination attempt, and the Queen had personally ensured his safety. Ethan's mind still raced. He hadn't thought he could survive such an attack. He had relied on instinct, luck, and his own creativity, things the Sarathi might have underestimated. But in doing so, he had shown them something important. Humans were not weak. The Queen approached him, her golden eyes calm but sharp. "You see now, human," she said softly, "why I asked if you are unclaimed. The court will try to shape you, use you, or destroy you, but you are free. That freedom gives you strength they do not understand." Ethan nodded, still breathing heavily. I didn't think I could survive." "I'm not a fighter, Your Majesty." Lysera's lips curved slightly. "Strength is not only in muscle. It is in mind and courage, in the will to survive. You have shown that today." Rumors and reactions the next days were a storm. News of the attempted attack spread through the palace faster than Ethan could walk through the halls. Nobles whispered behind closed doors. Some accused him of being a spy. Others called him a miracle, a human who had survived what no other could. Ethan tried to keep his head down, but the palace was a trap. Every glance seemed to hold judgment, every smile suspicion. He realized the Queen's protection was both a shield and a spotlight. The more visible he was, the more dangerous his position became. One evening, Velcor, the scholar, approached him again. "You have done well, human," he said. "But understand this. Surviving once is not enough. The court will not rest. They will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine." Ethan swallowed hard. "What should I do?" Velcor shook his head slowly. "You must rely on what humans have in abundance: imagination, cunning, and unpredictability. The Sarathi respect only what they cannot control. Show them you are uncontrollable." A strange bond. Despite the danger, Ethan could not deny a strange feeling growing inside him. He admired the Queen, not only for her power but for her courage to stand for what she believed even against centuries of tradition. And she seemed to see him, not as a weak human but as someone capable of thinking differently, of surviving where others would fail. Lysra summoned him that night. The chamber was quiet, the air filled with the soft hum of the palace. She looked at him with golden eyes, calm but intense. "You have survived the first test, human," she said. "But this is only the beginning. Others will try to break you. They will question your worth, your loyalty, your very existence. You must decide, will you stand with me even when the court turns against you?" Ethan hesitated. The weight of the question pressed on him. He thought of Earth, of his simple life, and of the strange path that had brought him here. And yet, he could not turn away. Something in the Queen's gaze, in her belief in him, gave him a courage he had never known. I will stand," he said finally, his voice quiet but firm. Lysra's eyes glimmered. "Good. You may be human, Ethan Hale, but your spirit is stronger than many Sarathi. That is why you are here. That is why I asked if you are unclaimed. You have chosen freedom, and freedom, once claimed by courage, can change worlds." A new reality. After the meeting, Ethan walked the halls alone, thinking about what had just happened. He realized something important. He was no longer just a human engineer. He was now a symbol of courage, of unpredictability, of the strange power humans carried that the Sarathi could not fully understand. But he also knew danger was everywhere. Assassins, jealous nobles, spies. He had survived the first attack, but many more could come. Every move he made would be watched. Every choice could change the course of the empire. Yet despite the fear, a small part of him felt alive. For the first time, he understood why the Queen had chosen him. Not because he was strong or rich or powerful, but because he was human. And humans, in their stubbornness and ingenuity, were capable of things even the most advanced civilizations could not predict. Ethan took a deep breath. Looking out a window at the endless city of silver towers and floating ships, the night sky was alive with stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy waited to see what a human could do. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Hale felt ready. Ethan Hale had spent 3 days recovering from the assassination attempt, and each day in the Sarathi Palace felt heavier than the last. The halls, once mesmerizing, now seemed like a labyrinth of suspicion and danger. Every glance, every whispered conversation reminded him that the nobles were watching, waiting for a mistake. Even simple movements could be interpreted as defiance, and in this place, mistakes were punished harshly. But Ethan had no choice. He could not leave. The Queen had claimed him. Her golden eyes, calm and unwavering, had made it clear that he was under her protection. And yet that protection came with a cost. He was no longer just a human engineer. He was now a piece in a game far larger than he had ever imagined. The arrival of the council. One morning, an urgent summons arrived. Ethan was escorted to the main throne chamber, where the air was thick with tension. The Sarathi Queen Lysra sat on her black stone throne, her gaze fixed on the balcony above the hall. From there, 3 massive ships of the Galactic Council hovered, their sleek surfaces reflecting the twin suns above the palace. Ethan's stomach tightened. The council was composed of the oldest and most powerful races in the galaxy. Their word carried weight, and their intervention was rarely benign. When the doors to the chamber opened, 3 envoys stepped forward. Each wore the distinctive colors and armor of their species. One with crystalline skin that shimmered like glass, another with scales reflecting silver and bronze, and the third, a towering figure with wings folded tightly across its back. Lysera's voice cut through the chamber. "Council envoys, you are welcome. State your purpose." The crystalline envoy stepped forward, his voice like breaking glass. "Queen Lysera, the Council has observed your recent actions regarding the human Ethan Hale. We are concerned for both the Empire and for humanity itself. The human must be returned to his world immediately." Ethan's heart skip. The morning air in the Sarathi Palace was crisp and filled with tension. Word had spread through the Empire that Ethan Hale, a human, would now face the trial of tradition. It was an ancient test reserved for those who sought to stand beside Sarathi rulers, a demonstration of courage, wit, and loyalty. Few outsiders had ever attempted it, and fewer had survived. Ethan woke before dawn, staring at the glowing crystals in his room. He felt a knot of anxiety twist in his stomach. This trial was not a mechanical problem. It was not a fire in a reactor he could fix with tools. It was a challenge of mind and spirit, designed to test everything about him. He knew failure could mean exile, or worse. Velkor, the scholar, appeared at his door, robes flowing silently. "The trial is not meant to destroy you," he said. "It is meant to reveal your truth. The nobles will attempt to challenge your courage, question your loyalty, and test your intellect. Remember, Ethan, the Sarathi respect those who cannot be predicted. That is your advantage." Ethan nodded slowly. "I will do my best." Velkor's golden eyes glimmered. "Good, let that be enough. And remember, courage is not the absence of fear. It is the will to act despite it." Entering the trial chamber. The trial chamber was vast and circular, illuminated by floating crystals that shifted colors from deep blue to amber. On the outer edges, nobles of the Sarathi Empire watched silently, their expressions unreadable. At the center of the chamber, a raised platform held ancient symbols carved into the stone. These symbols represented challenges of mind, body, and spirit. Ethan stepped forward cautiously. Every step echoed across the polished floor. The Queen, Lysera, remained on her black stone throne at the far end, her golden eyes fixed on him. She gave no words, only a calm nod. A Sarathi noble, acting as the trial master, spoke in a voice that carried across the chamber. "Ethan Hale, human of Earth, you have been summoned to prove your worth before the Empire. The trial will test your cunning, your courage, and your loyalty. Fail, and you will leave this chamber forever unclaimed. Succeed, and you will stand beside your queen, recognized by all." Ethan swallowed hard. Standing beside the queen? That thought both terrified and emboldened him. He knew he could not retreat. He had already chosen his path, challenge of the mind. The first test was simple in appearance but complex in execution. A series of luminous tiles formed a grid on the floor. Each tile bore an alien rune. The trial master explained. Stepping on the wrong tile would trigger alarms, releasing a dangerous energy pulse. Ethan knelt briefly, examining the runes. He did not understand their language, but he could see patterns, repetitions, symmetry, and sequences. His years of engineering had trained him to notice small details, to find solutions where others saw only chaos. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the first tile. It hummed softly but did not react violently. One by one, he moved across the grid, relying on observation, deduction, and intuition. Several times he paused, analyzing patterns carefully, then moved forward. When he reached the other side, the chamber echoed with a low hum of approval. The nobles murmured in surprise. The human had passed the first test, not by brute force, but by thinking differently. Challenge of courage. Next came a test of courage. A pit opened before him, revealing swirling energy beneath. A narrow, transparent bridge stretched across, unstable and glowing faintly. "Cross," the trial master commanded. "Only those who dare step forward may continue." Ethan felt a surge of fear. The bridge looked fragile. One misstep could drop him into the unknown energy below. He remembered Lysera's words, "Courage is acting despite fear." He placed one foot forward, then another. The bridge swayed slightly, and Ethan gritted his teeth. He focused, thinking not about the danger but about his goal, survival, honor, and standing beside the queen. Halfway across, a sudden gust of wind, artificial, created by the trial, threatened to knock him off balance. Ethan twisted instinctively, using his arms to counter the pull. The crowd gasped. Many Sarathi would have fallen, but the human adapted, using reflex and balance learned from years in starship maintenance and unpredictable conditions. When he reached the other side, the nobles erupted into whispers. Even the trial master's expression changed, a mix of surprise and respect. Ethan had not only survived, he had impressed those who believed humans were weak. Challenge of loyalty. The final test was the most personal. Ethan was presented with a choice, 2 doors. Behind one was a simulation of the Queen in danger, under attack by an unknown force. Behind the other was a representation of his own safety, a chance to walk away unharmed. The trial master's voice echoed, "Prove your loyalty. Choose the path of courage and devotion, or preserve yourself." The Empire watches. Ethan's heart raced. His first instinct had been self-preservation, but he thought of Lysera, the Queen who had protected him, who had believed in him. He thought of the nobles who had tried to destroy him, of the assassination attempt, and of the whispers in the palace that called him weak. He stepped toward the door representing the Queen's danger. Behind it, alarm sounded. Illusions of fire and energy surged. Ethan pressed forward, dodging and weaving as obstacles rose before him. The chamber's illusions tested him, trying to force him to retreat, but he pushed through, driven by instinct, courage, and loyalty. Finally, he reached the center, where the simulation ended. He was unscathed. The chamber fell silent. Every noble present stared at him, some in disbelief, others in grudging admiration. The trial master approached. "Ethan Hale, you have proven that your mind is sharp, your courage unwavering, and your loyalty absolute. You have passed the trial of tradition, a feat no human has ever accomplished." Ethan felt a wave of relief, pride, and exhaustion wash over him. He had done it. Against all odds, he had survived, adapted, and proven his worth. The Queen's declaration, Queen Lysera, rose from her throne, her golden eyes fixed on him. She raised a hand, signaling the nobles to silence. "All who witness this trial," she said, her voice echoing across the chamber, "have seen what I have known from the beginning. This human is not weak. He is not fragile. He is worthy to stand beside me, not because of his species, but because of his spirit," the nobles murmured. Some tried to argue, some still whispered doubts, but the Queen's authority was absolute. She stepped down from her throne and approached Ethan, her gaze unwavering. "Ethan Hale," she said softly, "you are no longer unclaimed. You are recognized by this empire as my chosen, my ally, and my companion in purpose. Stand with me, and together we will shape the future." Ethan felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. He had never expected to hear such words. He had never expected to be recognized, respected, or accepted in a world so alien and so dangerous. And yet here he was. He bowed slightly, the simplest gesture of respect he could manage. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will do my best." Lysera's lips curved slightly. "Your best is already enough, human. The Empire has seen your courage. The galaxy will see it too." A turning point. After the trial, Ethan walked through the palace gardens. The stars above were bright, and the city below shimmered in quiet brilliance. He thought about the dangers he had faced, the threats that still lingered, and the weight of responsibility he now carried. He realized something important. Being human was not a weakness. His mind, his courage, and his loyalty, traits his species had developed through centuries of survival on Earth, were exactly what the Sarathi had underestimated. Humans could not be predicted. Humans could survive. Humans could change the game. And standing beside the Queen, he now understood that he had a chance to do just that. To prove that humanity was not just a fragile newcomer in the galaxy, but a force to be reckoned with. Enemies in silence. Even with the trial complete, Ethan knew the danger was not over. Some nobles were still plotting, whispering and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Assassins could strike again, spies could infiltrate, and the council might still act. Velcor approached him quietly in the gardens. "Remember, Ethan," he said, "this trial has shown your worth, but the world will still test you every day. Never let your guard down. Trust in your instincts, your courage, and your human mind. That is your greatest weapon." Ethan nodded. He felt the truth of those words deep in his bones. He had survived the trial, proven his loyalty, and earned the respect of the Queen. But survival in this empire required more than a single victory. It required constant vigilance, constant courage, and the stubborn determination that humans had carried for generations. And Ethan Hale was ready. Ethan Hale had survived assassins, council ultimatums, and the trial of tradition. The palace no longer felt like a maze of suspicion. It was now a stage where his courage, intellect, and loyalty had proven themselves. Yet every day brought new challenges. The nobles who had doubted him still lurked in shadows, and the Galactic Council had not forgotten his presence. But Ethan had changed. The human who had once only fixed engines now understood the delicate balance of power, the subtle currents of politics, and the quiet strength of survival. He walked through the palace corridors with a new confidence, not arrogance, but quiet assurance. Queen Lysera watched him, her golden eyes always attentive. Their bond had deepened. What had begun as curiosity, as a test of humanity, had become respect, trust, and an understanding beyond words. A celebration of humanity. The day after the trial, the Queen called a gathering.